We had 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks rehearsal, I guess. Gosh, I'm trying to remember back. It's so long now, and maybe 3. If we had not had it, we would all be fish that were drowning. It's amazing, as great a writer as Mamet is. I don't think that there is a playwright in the world who is as difficult to learn, for the actors to learn the lines. They are just, they're unique, they are slightly off. The whole trick is to make them sound like normal conversation, or if you're screaming or you're swearing or whatever it is, it's got to end up sounding totally normal, but it is not. His words are just slightly off, or they're grouped in syntax just slightly different than another playwright or a lesser playwright would do. He has another thing in common that I found with the greatest of writers, Billy Wilder, for instance, and Neil Simon, and that is not just what he writes, but what he doesn't write, because he never writes too many words. And every one of those, every single one of them is written. There is not an ad lib in this film by anybody, to my knowledge, that was ever printed and kept. There's an awful lot of takes when you might forget one, but when you do, it's like dropping a whole sentence. The whole rhythm goes. David has a rhythm, and each character has its rhythm, and each actor had to find that rhythm. And for the first couple of weeks, you go absolutely bananas, not only trying to remember the lines, but to make them natural, so that you're not just listening for cues or thinking of your lines, but really behaving as a character truly would in life, and that is, as I am now. I'm not thinking of the words I'm picking, I'm thinking of the thought I'm trying to get across. When you are really in a scene, that's what an actor does. He isn't just listening for cues. Most actors act at each other. They don't act with each other. And the interesting thing is that there isn't one of the really, really fine actors that was not theater trained. That's where you really learn it. You can't learn how to act in movies. You got to learn how to act before you get in movies. The third day of rehearsal, after the costumes had been decided on before rehearsals and were ready, he would come to rehearsal and put on the entire costume, including the shoes, the socks, even the underwear that he thought this guy would wear. And he wore them all through rehearsals. And it helped him. It sounds a little bit extreme or funny, but boy, it doesn't to me. I can understand it completely. I've done it at times. It depends if you feel that it will help you on a particular character. When I was doing Missing, something made me want to, I wanted to keep the man I wanted to, let's say, keep him more contained than I have a tendency to do with characters. I have a tendency to use my face, my body, and my hands to a great extent, no matter what the character. And at times, I have been told by a few thousand critics, possibly too much. But at any rate, when we did Missing, I felt that this man, of all the characters that I had played, certainly up to that point, would contain his emotions. And I suddenly struck on the idea about a week before we started the film that he would wear a tiny hat, a tiny brimmed hat, and he would wear it dead straight, like a Brooks Brothers type hat, that sort of thing, in all his apparel and everything would have that sort of thing. Not expensive, but very simple and very acceptable, very proper, etc. Whenever I put that hat on, it helped me. It was like putting a straitjacket on. It sounds very strange, but it's funny what things will work for an actor, like the suit, like rehearsing in the suit for Ed. I can understand that. Why the hat worked for me, I don't know, but it did. Whenever I put it on, it would help me. It helped contain everything in it. It was like putting the lid on the tea kettle, I guess is the best way to do it. I wore that damn thing. I would have worn it in scenes inside a restaurant if they would have let me. And I think it really had a very positive effect on the character and to the good. The overall thing I think about Mamet, like the great playwrights, is that he's a sponge. The really great playwrights can sit with you And they're just sitting and they're talking and they're looking at you. But inside, they are just sopping you up as a character, like a sponge put in water. You know, one of the things, aside from Mamet, one of the things that attracted me to this part was that I had never played one like it, and that's what an actor really wants and looks for, a part that will challenge or to stretch, whatever way you want to put it. And of course, as you get older, two things happen. It gets more and more difficult, if you're lucky enough to still be working, to find parts where you feel, well, I played this guy once, or I played at least major aspects of the character. The other thing that happens is that there are great parts, but there's fewer of them. There is wonderful parts, but there's only one King Lear, one Macbeth, you know. And the same goes in film. It's always difficult to find great parts. It always has been. It always will be. That's what gives Termination the use of the word great as opposed to good or fair or mediocre or downright lousy. The biggest actor's problem, the greater the part, peculiarly enough, sometimes the bigger the problem in playing it, because when his writing is bad, you really are limited in what you can do. You can do just so much. And what you really basically try to do in your selection of how to play it is figure out a way to make the damn thing interesting and exciting, because it isn't really there in the writing, and it's only skin deep. If you're stuck in it. If you've been lucky, as I have most of the time, you may make big mistakes every now and then, but at least you're getting a chance to pick them. Most actors don't get that much luck. They take a job when they can get it, and they're forced, and sometimes they are really, truly marvelous actors that just haven't gotten the breaks that I and many others have gotten in getting really fine writing and the best of directors and fellow actors to work with, etc. You have to try to build a mountain, and you haven't even got a molehill. But when you do get a really good part, sometimes there are great traps. The biggest problem with Shelley was to try not to make him sympathetic. It is virtually impossible. Because, and David knows that, and that's fine, and that was intentional. But I want to tell you, it could drive an actor nuts in a way. You're fully aware of the brilliance of the writing and the greatness of the character that you've been lucky enough to be given. But despite all of the problems this guy has got with he's got no family except his daughter, whom he obviously loves, and she's sick in the hospital, God knows with what, and he can't even pay the bill. And they may throw her out, as often happens, because he can't pay the bill. I mean, life is not too good for Shell. And yet, when you analyze it, this man stinks. He's a terrible man. If he had a wife, he would sell her in order to make a sale and to get someone to sign on the dotted line to buy a piece of marshland that they think is going to be a golf course. I mean, he's a terrible guy. He's in league with the devil, practically. He stinks. He lies. He cheats. He does anything. And he's proud. He tells stories about how he used to be able to sell and everything, and takes great pride in selling crap. He's not a nice man at all. In other words, I love him because I love him as the actor who had a chance to play this very rich character. I would love Richard III, too, but he isn't a particularly enjoyable guy to be around. Or a rapist, or a killer, or someone that we would totally detest can sometimes be an absolutely fascinating character for an actor. So from that point of view, the actor loves him. But the trap was to make him sympathetic. I kept trying not to. How successful I was is somebody else's opinion. The kind of dialogue these guys were speaking is like, I remember Walter Matthau, telling me about a friend of his coming to New York for the first time, and he got out at Grand Central, and he was going up to about 92nd and 5th Avenue, and he jumped in a cab, and he was very excited, and about every 3 blocks he'd say to the cabbie, he'd say, "We there yet?" And the cabbie would say, "No." And then he'd say, "Where are we?" He'd say 48th Street. And 2 minutes later, where are we? He said 53rd Street. And about the 5th time he said, where are we? He says, 82nd, will you? Now the point is, what the hell kind of a sentence is 82nd, will you? But we know exactly what he meant. Cut it out, will you? But the good writer wouldn't say cut it out. He would say 82nd, will you? Mamet would write that kind of a line. I think also the introduction of the Alec Baldwin part, which was not in the play, was vital to the film, because very early on, as we have already seen, he set that whole stage. Now, that was not done in the play. It took a little longer, and I remember for a while I was a bit confused. I was fascinated, but a little bit confused, and I think that Mamet was fully aware of that and did that on purpose. He held the audience, but he didn't really let them know. He let the problem slowly creep in on them. But in a film, you could lose people doing that. You better let them know and hook them a little bit earlier and a little heavier. And with the introduction of the Baldwin part, he really hit us and the audience right over the head within the first 5 minutes of what these guys are facing. And I think it made a vital, positive change in transferring it from the play to the film script. I've never really been stuck, as so often happens, playing with somebody that I could not get along with or really did not like, that I intensely disliked, or where it came out in the open and we had a problem. If there was ever a problem with me and an actor, I will admit, and I would never name names, I've worked with some actors I didn't really respect that much. Actor, actress, I'm just saying actor in general. It could be a male or female. But not too often, thank God. But they never knew that I didn't think they were very good, or they never knew that I really was dissatisfied with what was happening on the film. And I've never had a knockdown, drag-out fight with a director, except once, and I will not name the director, because it's unnecessary. That's like Mommy Dearest or writing that crap that people write about, anything to sell about other people, usually getting away with it only because they're dead. I don't know. But I've been very fortunate that way. But my theory is very simple. If you let it be known, or if you start fighting with someone on a set over something, whether it's the director or the other actor, if it can't be resolved on a professional level, then you're going to hurt the film, and you're going to hurt your own performance, let alone everybody else's. It will never be as good. The audience may never know, but it would have been better if you had been able to work it out professionally and get along with the people. God knows how many love scenes have been done by two people that absolutely would spit at each other the minute you said cut. In the meantime, it's, oh, honey, darling, let's jump in the sack. And then the minute it's over, get out of my sight, you bitch, etc. I've seen it happen. I've been on sets where it's happened. But I've been very, very lucky it's not happened to me. But my theory is that basically, that it's impossible to have as good a scene as you would have had if the two people could have gotten along, even in scenes where people are fighting. A method actor might disagree with that, but I mean it.